welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, I've got a good one for you. Kind of been sitting on this one for a while, been thinking about when I'm going to slip it in, so to speak. No pun intended. Today, I want to look at the really captivating and innovative and a little bit secretive world of mummification. It really is an extreme practice that's bound to hopefully pique your curiosity. Now, mummification is more than just wrapping someone in plastic or duct tape or cellophane or even bed sheets. It really is a form of total enclosure fetishism, where people willingly surrender control and find pleasure in complete immobilization. It's like being wrapped in a cocoon of desire, with every moment restricted and every sensation heightened. So sit back with me today. Let's kind of unwrap the layers of this intriguing fetish and discover really what makes it so irresistible to quite a lot of people. So first, let's understand this a little bit more and kind of dive in and peel this apart, if you will. I know I'm kind of laying on the analogies a little thick today, but that's all right. Sometimes a little humor is fun. Mummification here really does become an extreme form of bondage that takes the concept of restraint to a whole new level. It does involve completely immobilizing somebody by wrapping them from head to toe, sometimes using different materials or all of the same material. Like I mentioned, plastic wrap, duct tape. I've seen people use tin foil, bed sheets, shower curtains, even vacuum shrink wrap. Now, this total enclosure leaves someone feeling utterly helpless and at the mercy of their partner's desires. And the materials here used in the mummification process serve to really restrict the movement entirely, and they create this sensation of being tightly bound and confined. If we can all kind of remember back to when we were kids, and our parents used to tuck us in at night and wrap us really tight. And, I remember when I was a kid, I used to tell my mom to wrap me up like a mummy, and you felt safe and kind of secure. So I think for me, from an early age, I can kind of understand. It felt warm and I don't know, just kind of looked after. And that whole process of mummification really spoke to the level of care and love that people had for their pharaohs back in the day and others that were mummified. Obviously not the same thing, but it's just to give a little bit more depth and kind of context to this all. Now, if we understand that being tightly bound and confined, this truly ranges from a snug little bit of embrace of plastic wrap perhaps to something more intense like a vacuum sealed bag where movements and your body temperature and all of these things, because you got to remember a lot of plastics for the most part don't breathe, so you're going to be sweating quite a bit. Mummification really does involve sensory deprivation to a whole new level because we're restricting touch. So our other senses are becoming heightened. And we are having them blocked and restricted. Maybe our hand movements aren't allowed. Or they're taking away sight as well, or even sound or smell, possibly even taste. So we really can go the gambit here on what you can do during the mummification process. Now, this in turn, for the person that's going through this really heightens their vulnerability and enhances their overall experience within the process. There's a really interesting article I came across from Dr. Agarwal's, and he made a post about this on Psychology Today, and he talked about it really, the various, not only the techniques that are used, but some of the aspects that were involved. And I want to get into those a little bit later. But the definition and the emphasis of its role in the enhancing these feelings of this helplessness really sits at the core center of why we do it. And its total incorporation with sensory play. This, for us, kind of begins to paint this vivid picture of this world inside of mummification and how intimate this play is going to be, the level of experience going into this style of play, because this is not going to be something for the faint of heart. I think it has to go beyond the levels of thinking of, oh, well, anyone can do this. While most of the techniques that we do inside of the BDSM world can be experienced by quite a few people, adequate training, like anything else, you don't want to do something. And I'm going to get into some of the safety aspects of this a little bit later, but there is quite a bit of safety, not only physical health, but mental and emotional health that we have to consider if we're going to do something that's a touch more extreme. So when we look at the whole fact that this surrounds sensation and total enclosure, it really becomes, mummification becomes a really powerful tool here. And this exploration of the physical and emotional stimulation that can lead to our, heightened arousal and intimacy between two people. And when an individual is mummified here, every touch, every caress, every sensation is absolutely 100% magnified tenfold. And it creates this really intense experience that goes beyond the traditional forms of bondage. Now, imagine you've bound your slave, maybe you're using, or your sub, or whatever the case may be, you're using a violet wand across their legs or their arms, and so they're starting to feel that slight stinging sensation, or you've maybe cut some small holes in whatever you have them mummified in. So let's just say plastic for now is easy. So you might have some plastic holes cut out around the nipples, and you're pulling on them harder or twisting them, or whatever the case may be, and you're really starting to amplify the sensations, because there is no, for as much as somebody's struggling here, the pure restricted bondage nature, they can't move, they can't do anything. So they really are at the whim and mercy of somebody else. Now, here, whether it's this soft glide of plastic wrap against the skin, or it's this whole tight constriction of maybe vacuum plastic, mummification amplifies all of our sensations. And it will make the slightest touch feel more electrifying, cold, hot. All of the things that we experience are just going to start going through the roof. Now, total enclosure fetishism here, of one, which mummification is a part of, really delves into some psychological aspects of control. And for me, this is where this starts to get interesting, because what we're starting to talk about here is vulnerability, surrender, and trust. Now, there are many people out there who enjoy total enclosure and the thrill that lies in feeling of being completely enveloped, or of losing oneself in the embrace of the material. It's really a form of this whole, not just sensory deprivation, but you can kind of think of it as like a sensory overload, where every aspect and every sense is engaged at every single moment, while consequently, they're also restricted. And this heightened state of awareness leads to intense feelings of arousal, liberation, and some people enjoy this whole relinquishment of control and embrace these desires. And when we look at things like even rubber fetishism, where people find pleasure in the texture of and scent of latex or rubber, to vacuum pack fetishism, where that whole sensation of being tightly sealed and it creates a sense of confinement and excitement. Each one of these forms offers its own unique experience and erotic desire. Even something like spandex fetishism, which is that whole skin-tight fabric and full body coverage, it appeals to, I imagine, those who really crave that sensation of being completely encased, but are unable to move or escape. These examples here kind of just illustrate the breadth and the depth of the total enclosure fetishism range. And they show how it really encompasses a wide range of sexual desires and erotic experiences within the lifestyle community itself. But for everything that we do, before we're running out there and kind of just, jumping in and not really paying attention, we have to understand the risks, the safety, the consent that all of these take, pre-consent negotiations, health checks. And I'm going to start speaking, I think, a little bit more on health and mental health a little bit more lately, or in coming episodes now, because I really think we have to start understanding consent in a larger aspect, right? It's not just whether we're saying yes, are we mentally ready, are we emotionally ready, are we physically ready, right? So I'm going to break down some of the risks and safety and the consent measures, and I'm going to bring in some other psychological aspects to really understand all of these things, because I think it's really at a point where we get involved in some of these fetishes and we don't really realize, we look at something and go, oh, I can replicate that, but we don't understand what it's like if somebody's claustrophobic, and we haven't discussed these things, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. So now, while we understand that mummification definitely is going to be an exhilarating experience, probably more for the person getting mummified than, well, we're going to take pleasure in it being a dominant if we're the ones wrapping them, right? We're the ones in control. It's really essential here to acknowledge the potential risks that are involved. The first is we're going to come across a suffocation. When we think that we typically think of just covering somebody's mouth and their nose and they just can't breathe, but our skin breathes, right? So we have to make sure that if you're going to do this, that maybe if you do bind the entire body, maybe you haven't bound the feet, so there is some sort of minimal airflow, because almost instantly the body will start to heat up. And when that happens, there's going to be sweating involved, and it's going to create, which leads to the next thing, is going to be dehydration. But suffocation through the skin, because the skin's not getting enough oxygen, is a real reality. So keeping some sort of shears or implement to cut the plastic away in case of anything happening. And you should set up pre-elevation or pre-checks going in, and words if elevation's going up, you should need to be monitoring each other and be physically fit to do something like this, so you can avoid these pitfalls. Dehydration becomes the next one. Like I said, you're wrapped up, you're vacuum sealed, you're kind of basting in your own juices, if you will. And drinking water, definitely having enough water before, maybe if you're really in mid-scene or you need to stop the scene because you're dehydrated, start drinking some water. And most definitely post-scene, because it's going to be crucial to start replenishing, probably even with some electrolytes, all the fluids that you've lost. And finally, we need to also discuss circulation. Now, these are just some of the primary concerns that when we're engaging in this type of bondage. But circulation, because everything we do, from handcuffs or impact, all of these things that have any physical contact with another person, we have to absolutely be anatomy wise and where we are doing these things. You don't want to bind somebody's hands and that their wrists are down and then they can't move, and so there's going to be increased pressure on the wrist, and it might cut circulation, or going around somebody's head and going around their neck. All of these things have to be seriously considered, seriously negotiated. You more than likely should probably have at least one, if not two other people present, especially in the beginning if you're just learning. You should be attending classes for something that's a little bit more experienced, a little bit further down the line. But the reason why you may want to have a couple other people there in the beginning is because if you miss something and you're just one person with your partner you're interacting with, that they may see something you don't, and they can help you stop the scene and secure the person who's being mummified and make sure that they're okay and they're not in need of anything more than just getting out of the mummification process. And kind of covering some of this are just general concerns, right? I'm not speaking as a medical doctor here, but you have to imagine that when the body is tightly wrapped, especially around our chest and our abdomen, there is going to be a risk of restricting breathing and impairing some of our circulation. And prolonged mummification here can lead to, like I mentioned before, us getting really hot. So that's going to spur our dehydration. And you got to remember, if we get too hot and we're sweating everything out to cool down, which is our natural cooling mechanism, once we have no water left, it's going to get really, really bad really fast. And even the fact of being hindered for so long can affect our psychological mindset. Now, to mitigate some of these things, some of the safety precautions are really crucial. Most important, I would probably think that you, like I talked about before, adequate airflow, not just somewhere throughout their body, but obviously across their mouth, maybe even leaving it small. In the beginning, you want to start small and easy, so people can get used to it. But make sure you have plenty of breathing holes around the nose and the mouth. It also removes the risk, or it definitely lessens the risk, or if not, removes it completely, of them suffocating from not being able to breathe whatsoever. Like I mentioned, safety scissors or some other cutting type implement to remove the plastic or whatever you've encased them in very quickly. These are just some simple precautions we can all take, and they make all the difference between a safe and enjoyable experience to a potentially dangerous one. And maybe in the beginning, if you're trying this process, you can even try it out with something like a bed sheet. Bed sheets typically are made of cotton, so they're going to breathe really well. You can still get that tightly wound posture, and wrap somebody up really tight, and they won't have maybe the same experiences they would if you start to elevate it with things like duct tape or plastic or some other material that we're going to use in the process. And you're slowly gradually building them up, and you're both getting a lot of experience. Now, it's really vital here to consider the psychological aspects. Now, the appeal here lies in the sense of control and surrender that comes from being completely immobilized. Surrendering oneself to our partner's desires, it's going to be really intensely erotic, and it's going to tap into that whole primal instinct and emotion, and the sensation of vulnerability and helplessness really will heighten arousal and create that deep sense of trust and intimacy between two people, because we are now at their sheer will and desire. Whatever they want to do, they're going to be able to do. There's not really a way to fight back, right? So you've got to have a lot of trust put in play. This is probably not going to be something you want to do in pickup play. This is not going to be to do with somebody you probably just started seeing. This is a little bit more advanced kink. And we need to understand that there are different levels in our world that are advanced, or more advanced things than, for some people than there are others. It's not about being gatekeeping or elitism. It's about safety and precaution. If you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't probably do it. Get trained. That's the whole point. Our community offers free classes all the time. Take advantage. Now, exploring mummification also can evoke a range of physical and mental and emotional responses that I talked about before. Physically, people can get, like I talked about, pressure and constriction along with heightened sensitivity to touch. Mentally, they can become in a state, they first can get into a state of relaxation and meditation even, as the mind starts to focus solely on and be present in the moment. Emotionally, it can bring out feelings of liberation and empowerment, but fear and constriction, especially if somebody doesn't know or doesn't disclose that they might be potentially claustrophobic. And all of these things, though, once you've negotiated and talked about them, how you're going to do, really does liberate individuals to explore their desires and pleasures in a new way. But we can't do any of this without consent and pre-negotiation. And I think I've spoken to death about consent, and I'm sure a lot of you are tired of hearing it, but you have to consent to doing certain things. And there's no consent. I don't like consent mid-scene. We've pre-negotiated our scene. We've said, we reviewed maybe negotiation one time. We do our scene. The scene stays as it is. Doesn't matter who wants to change what. There's no negotiations mid-scene. Scene ends. You can do the scene again and then add the new things in later on. But that way, no one's caught off guard. No one's, worried that one thing is going to go one way or another. It's really quite an interesting kink. I think I've only seen the process done a couple of times. I'm haven't fully explored mummification by itself. Not saying that I won't possibly in the future. It does kind of have a fascination and allure to it. But it is one of these things that I think in practice I would want to find somebody and watch some demonstrations or go to and attend to a class to learn some of the better techniques along the way. Definitely if, hearing this and you're into it, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But as I kind of wrap this up, pun intended, on this exploration of mummification today, this kink really does offer a unique blend of physical sensation, psychological exploration, and emotional connection for people. And it's kind of got it all wrapped in one, and you've got multiple things going. You've got bondage and sensory deprivation. You've got trust. You've got potentialities of subspace for this, from the intense pleasure of the total enclosure to that deep sense of trust between two people. This type of play, mummification, really allows people to explore their desires in an erotic fantasies. And by understanding if we can prioritize some of the risks and work through them the best that we can, in case something arises and we take all the necessary precautions, I think you're going to find a kink that you're going to really be interested in. And so, as you kind of consider the allure of mummification, ask yourself a question. What draws you to the idea of complete surrender? Now, we understand this concept in total power exchange because it's something that's needed. Now, whether it's this whole thrill of giving up your control or the excitement of exploring something new, maybe take a moment and reflect on, what kind of drives you inside of our community. Because we know what we need to do, but we oftentimes lose sight of the things that we want to try or become a part of because we're afraid of judgment or being criticized or anything else from our community. So I'm going to put this question up on Spotify. Love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to post this to social media on FetLife. Love to get this discussion going about mummification. Love to hear back from the community. Anybody who's involved in this practice, if somebody feels that I've kind of maybe missed out, I know there's a lot more to this practice. If I've kind of left some stuff out, let me know. I'm willing to, maybe bring you on. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a chat about this. Or, if you have some other topics you'd like to talk about in the coming shows. I haven't done an interview in a while. I've tried to line some up, and my schedule and their schedules aren't working out. But if you'd like to have a chat, let me know. Reach out. The print version of my book, Tangled Desires, the exploration of BDSM and psychology, is now out and available. You are more than, for those who have been asking me, it's now available for purchase. I did promise you all last week I was going to be revealing the new name of my next podcast. I'm not going to give you a firm date yet, but I believe it's going to be June now. Just got to push back. I'm running a little bit behind. But here it is. BDSM, Blood, Death, Sex, and Murder, a true crime podcast that will be coming to you live in June. I will be putting up links. I will link the new artwork that I had wonderfully done by a graphic designer up in Chicago. He knows who he is. If he listens to the show, thank you so much. I really, truly appreciate it. Even regardless of the fact you did a great job. I hope you all like this logo. I think it looks fantastic. Super duper exciting. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to be setting that up. And there's still some things. If you're interested in helping me out with the new show, because it's going to be talking about crimes that happen that have some sort of BDSM connotation, whether they're linked to the lifestyle directly or indirectly, or have elements that we've never fully understood, giving my 2 cents, talking about these things. or the connections to a bigger platforms, social media, and how that's affected those things. I'm going to be trying to draw on some of those interviews. So that is coming. My Twitter is up for that. I will release all that information soon. I'm not going to go over, I'm not going to bowl over too much on that. If you are looking for a therapist that's keen on the lifestyle, I am kink friendly. I've been a part of the community for over 25 years, and you need someone to talk to. I specialize in trauma and other things. Please feel free to reach out. www.enhanced-mind.com. You can get more information there from me. If you're interested in helping me out with my upcoming podcast, the second one I'm going to be doing, please feel free to contact me at thekinkperspectivealtogether@gmail.com. If this is the first time you're listening to my show, I hope you enjoyed it. There's over 100 other episodes. Please like, subscribe, love. Keeps the show for free. If you could rate me 5 stars on Spotify's app, I'd really appreciate it. Allows me to keep doing this and giving back to the community that I've gotten so much from for the last 25 years. So, let me know what you think about today's show. I really, mummification, your thoughts. Have you tried it? Is this something you want to try? You don't want to try? Maybe why? Let me know in the comments and your thoughts below. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay keen.